this time we are wrapping up Aldnoah.Zero from A1 Pictures, and it is streaming on Crunchyroll.
And if you were part of Annie Twitter, apparently this was like a super hated show, except everybody kept watching it, so...
I mean, the last episode came out the day before we recorded this, and people were pretty good at not giving out spoilers, but it just lit up for all the people who hated it and said that they were never going to watch another episode. There were a lot of people commenting on this last episode.
Oh, they were all quote-unquote hate watching Al, whatever, people. I really enjoyed this show from the very beginning. We gave a really great review to the first episode. One of the things that kind of proved itself over the course of the episodes was, once again, we've sort of got this military force, in this case the Earth military force, and it has like low tech. It's not as good as the Martian force, and they have like super crazy robots. And so, you kept kind of expecting, okay, well eventually they're gonna get some technology and that's gonna be like the turning point of the war or something. But it really doesn't do that, and that's what I really liked about the series, is that it was more about them using their grunt soldiers and their grunt robots and like being clever about it and trying to figure out like a strategy using them instead of just relying on getting better technology.
They didn't have like a mid-season upgrade. We didn't see Anaho get into like a super suit, which I think everybody, especially us, kept waiting for, like, all right, now he's going to get the super suit. Oh, there's a super suit. Oh, they passed it right by, huh?
Yeah, I was really actually impressed because about halfway through, they do find some Martian tech. And it was like, okay, finally, here we go. Here it is. And instead, they create a battleship and not, this one super suit. So I was, like, really almost shocked by that kind of turn of events. And I liked that it kept with that pace for the whole series. And Inaho is all about calm and thinking through whatever the Martian... Because all the Martian tech kind of has, like, a gimmick or something that it's really good at, but it always has to have the one weakness.
In fact, all that kind of comes to a head in the last episode. I won't go too much into it, but yeah, it is kind of almost like a boss rush of like, what did you learn from all the previous encounters? Now use it all again, but in a slightly modified way.
I know that a lot of people didn't like Anaho and as a lead character, and I didn't love him or hate him. I was just fine with him. I really liked Slane. He was the Terran who was sort of stuck in the Martian forces trying to get back to the princess, and he had like a really crazy character arc, especially some real surprises at the end of the series. I liked it, but at the same time, I think people who were watching with me could attest that I was starting to get frustrated by the end because they kept having that, oh, he almost finds the princess. Oh, they almost meet. Oh, and like, I can only take that so much before it starts driving me insane, and it's like, ugh, just stop. I was getting a little frustrated with that throughout the season.
One of the points of contention, at least in this apartment when we were watching it, was Count Salzbaum, because I feel like they definitely wanted to give him a motivation outside of, I wish power! Or like, I'm a filthy racist or something. I'm not sure how well that worked. I do feel like they did give him more complex motivation. He obviously didn't like Terrans, but I don't feel like that was the sum. I must destroy the coordinators for this blue earth! I'm looking at you, Gundam Seed Destiny.
The thing with him is, well, first, I liked that there was this conspiracy on the side of the Martians, and then we finally get through to like, okay, who's the kind of the head of the conspiracy, and that's him. But I thought that, I don't know, like, we learned all about his past, but I don't know, I thought that his plan was kind of like overly elaborate.
Yeah, like I said, I'm glad that they tried to give him more. I'm just not sure how well it worked, because his logic did seem a little,
Because it's like, I hate the Martians, so I'm gonna wage a war on Earth.
Because I also hate the darn Earthers with all their resources. So I pretty much hate everybody. So I guess his whole idea was, I'm gonna play both ends that I hate versus the middle and have them damage each other so much that my ideals can sweep in the meantime.
Yeah, I guess I guess in a long term, maybe, but it just seemed like this whole plan was really detrimental to Earth and not to the Martians, who were really the ones responsible for everything that he was, like, so pissed off about.
Well,
so it's just, you know, I was like, are we going about this sort of backwards?
Well, I guess his plan was maybe... And once again, this is me. I wonder how much this is me just hand-waving stuff away. But was to start then killing people that he didn't like in the craziness of the battlefield. But before that happened, Naho and all his crew got so involved that he had to basically step in sooner than he thought.
Yeah, there's like some complicated politics going on that it's one of those things where all of these kind of grown-up characters have these really interesting backstories, but they're definitely not the focus. And unfortunately, like, I felt like on the Earth side it was okay because we had like the captain of the ship. She was really cool, and like we found out a little about her. The teacher, who's the trainer, who, you know, was part of the past war, who has like a bunch of problems, and like from that, like, we learned a little bit, and I felt like it was enough on that side, but that's only because they weren't the leads, like, they weren't the heroes, whereas since Count Sazbom was, like, the villain of this series, I feel like I wanted it to make more sense or, like, come together a little bit better.
I know that girl who was, like, the daughter of the Mars traders, or, like, the Mars infiltrators, I know people had various opinions on her, especially her weird little, kind of mid-game switch and then switch back. I don't know, I feel like you could argue that switch was mostly done for dramas more than anything else. I didn't feel it really took that much away from anything.
The princess, you know, who's like the catalyst for pretty much like the entire show, or at least the faux catalyst they pretend to use. I liked her motivations, but sometimes I felt like that Earth was almost too nice to her. Like there was a little bit of like, oh, she's a Martian, but not really. And it's like, they're in the middle of a war, and like, this planet has been devastated by these Martians. They're constantly being taught in military school because of the Martian invasion, that I thought that she should have had like a little bit more obstacle.
She had more obstacle from the Mars trader girl than
Didn't you feel like I felt like, oh, it's a little too, it's not like it was rosy or anything, but I felt like everyone was a little too accepting in considering everything about what was going on.
Do you feel like they were like, essentially she was the only way to power the ship, so it was like, you know what? War makes strange bedfellows. We don't have to throw you a birthday party at the end of this thing. We'll work with you for now.
That's probably what it was.
Because, I mean, in the last episode, there is that little conversation about her asking them if they hated her, and all of them were basically like, I'm just not going to answer that question. And then Naho, they had to go, you know what? Like, people hating each other and not hating each other isn't really what war is about, so let's move on from that question and do what we gotta do.
And Naho, the voice of reason, very smart character. I didn't like him at the beginning, and I don't think that I like totally warmed up to him, but I definitely liked him better as the series went on.
I do kind of, once again, I feel this is controversial, but I do kind of feel he is kind of like Chiriko from Votam's, where he's kind of this really detached character who mainly stays detached. He eventually grows a little bit of a soul and connection to people, but his main thing is to move forward the plot and come up with the stratagems to defeat the stronger enemies. And really kind of the flair and personality comes from the supporting cast, like the post-traumatic stress teacher and the captain and
the
Slane and everybody else. And as much as people kind of hate Naho and love Chiriko from Votam's, I feel like they kind of serve the same role in many ways. I think one just is more popular because he's older, and thereby people...
He's like barely older though, right? Isn't he like 18 or something?
Yeah, no.
He just looks like a man or whatever.
So, you know, that's mecha fandom for you, but I feel like they both serve that same role. That it's actually, they're kind of like the moon. They reflect changes in other characters more than themselves, and that's supposed to be kind of their major role.
Okay, now we can talk about the ending.
Okay.
Well, we can't really talk about it. I mean, It's so shocking, honestly, that anything we say, we just can't go into details because it must be seen to be believed, I guess.
But man, for the number of people who said, like, I hate the show and everything, and, like, I never gonna watch another episode, like, every week.
Or that they were like, this show's been bad since episode 1, or whatever.
There was a lot of, man, that twist at the end really destroyed the show. And it's like, you already hated the show. It can't destroy what you already hated unless you secretly actually liked it.
Truth right there. Well, because I totally believe that, because people hated this show for things it didn't do. Like, it was like, oh man, this show is like the super teenager and like he's gonna get a super robot, and then like that never happens, and then everyone was just mad at him for doing it anyway, and it was like, it didn't do that thing that you're mad about, like it never did it. Or like they're like, oh my god, this harem show, and it's like, it's not doing that. Like, don't be mad at it for the things it didn't do, unless you wanted those things. But they weren't saying it like that. They were like, oh my god, this should be a harem show with super robots. So
I think you got too close to the truth.
But it was like, I felt like people were angry for things they thought the show was gonna do, but then the show never did those things, but they were still angry about it because they thought it might.
And also, I feel like the specter of Gen Urobuchi was so present in this show that also half the discussion was like, well, I guess that was a really Gen Urobuchi ending, and then people were like, but Gen Urobuchi didn't write it, he was only really seriously involved with the first 3 episodes, and he was more scenario rather than characters. And then people were blaming that, oh, they were trying to outdo Gen Urobuchi in their ending. And then it was like, yeah, no, this show failed because it didn't have Gen Urobuchi. It was like every possible way you could attach his involvement with that series came up in those few hours after that show aired. There was no like conspiracies about people purposely sabotaging the show. Or like, Gen Urobuchi was obviously fired after the 3rd episode. This was to get back at him or something. That was about to
Somebody probably said that, Al.
I was also watching the end of AKB 00048, so maybe I missed that tweet in there.
Well, as far as my feelings about the ending, I'm kind of still processing. I mean, as I said, I was really shocked. I guess it made me really curious about, it said that there's going to be more starting in the winter season, so it made me really curious where they go from here, because they've definitely, like, finished a big chunk of the story, like, like, an arc, but the ramifications of that are so, like, huge that I don't even know. I feel like people were kind of arguing earlier that, like, oh, I don't like Inoho, but I like Slane. I wish Slane was the main character. And I haven't been actually convinced that Slane isn't the main character. And the end of this made me also kind of go back to like, well, maybe he is the main character, you know, so.
Yeah, it is curious where the focus is going to go. Because there's a lot of threads they could follow, but there's no definitive, this is the thread that we're going to follow. So.
I mean, yes and no, because I feel like the last line of the show kind of tells me what the thread will be. I mean, obviously, I don't think that's a spoiler, but it was like, the whereabouts of Princess Celium are still unknown. Like, that's like the last thing that's said. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, okay, and based on the events that lead up to that, I feel like, okay, well, that's gonna be the focus. But again, we knew the princess was sort of this pillar, but then yeah, who and what will be swirling around her, I have no idea. I mean, I have no predictions because I was not expecting what I saw. I actually thought maybe the show was going to end. Like, I thought we were going to get like a finale. So how did you feel about it, Al? Were you like, did you dislike it, or?
I feel like it's hard to judge, mostly because I feel like it was the kind of ending of, like, if you had a 2-part book, watch book 2, because I feel like so much of how book 2 goes is going to determine how much did the shocking things at the end of this episode, how much are they going to feel valid and how much are they going to feel like... Because I feel like a lot of people are like, yep, the show jumped the shark or whatever, or basically downhill from there. And I feel like they were so big and bold, and we don't know the full fallout of them, then I have a hard time judging it till I see the second half.
I mean, it made you want to watch the second half.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see the second half, just to see how I can go back and judge the first half. But I feel like I'm still in it. I mean, it wasn't like I was like, and over. Somebody can tell me afterwards if I want to watch, because I'm done with it for now. I'm curious to see where this is going. I'd be really loath if we did like a numbered score for these things, which we don't. I'd be really hard pressed to. I'd have to like come up with some kind of like, yes, I'm just gonna give it this number at this point, and I will revise it at the end of season 2.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. I mean, but as I said, it makes me want to watch the next season. Kind of, in that way, I think it's important. It didn't make me say, well, I am so done. And I really, it kept my attention for the whole season. I really enjoyed the way that they did the mecha fights. I loved the music, fantastic music throughout. And I'm ready for more.
All right. I think that's a pretty insightful review. All right. See you guys next time.